Game 3 tomorrow night. I am planning on doing a live stream during Game 3. And I'm wearing Bruins because, let's be honest, the Bruins are in the Stanley Cup Finals. And while during the rest of the playoffs, I'm wearing who I think is going to win the game. I'm not worried about it. I'm enjoying the fact that Boston's in the Stanley Cup Final because who knows when it's going to happen again. So I'm just enjoying it, and that's why I'm wearing Bruins jersey today. This is Game 3, of course. This is the first game in St. Louis. It's the first Stanley Cup Finals game in St. Louis since 1970. So I expect the Blues fans to blow the roof off the place tomorrow before the puck even drops. That being said, we saw a tale of two games. But coming out of those two games, it is worthy of note. Bergeron has no points. He's a -2. Marchand, 1 goal, also a -2, and that goal was an empty netter. Pastrnak has an assist. He's a -3, and by the end of that game, in Game 2, he was pulled off the first line, and Danton Heinen was thrown up there. I would leave it that way. I would have Pasta on the second line, and I would have Heinen on the first. And I guess drop Backus down to the third. But we'll see what Bruce Cassidy does. He's been pretty smart with what he's done with the players so far this year, so I'll have some faith in him on this. Krug has no points, and he's neither been a plus nor a minus. And when Krug doesn't have points and that top line isn't scoring, Boston's not winning. Rask has made 52 saves on 57 shots in the first two games. He has a save percentage of .912, which is well below what he was sporting coming into this series. And honestly, without Corrali, Nordstrom, and Achari, this series is 2-0 for St. Louis. That fourth line, absolutely amazing. And I'm aware that it's not Nordstrom in the middle. I'm just putting those up there as the three guys on the fourth line. Now, on the St. Louis side of things, of course, Sundqvist is out. Now, Sanford will be in if Robert Thomas is not back in and we haven't heard one way or the other. Normally, when you haven't heard one way or the other, it means the guy's still out. So it's probably still Thomas out, which leaves Fabry in. And then Sundqvist being out probably puts Zach Sanford in the lineup. Now, in the event that Thomas comes back, Fabry would probably stay in the lineup. And so that works out pretty. Either way, this just shows the depth of both organizations. Both teams are missing players due to injury, and really they haven't felt it. Not that much. That being said, they've also been very lucky, knock on wood, that they haven't lost a core team member either. Bortuzzo, he played only 11 minutes and 54 seconds of Game 2. Does he end up being the one that sits if Dunn is back? Edmondson played 15 minutes, about 15 and a half minutes the last game. He could be the one that ends up sitting out. I think it'll probably be Bortuzzo, though. That's the easy solution to the problem if Dunn's back, and that's a good problem if you're St. Louis. In Game 1, the shots were 38-20 for Boston. In Game 2, they were 37-23 for St. Louis. I seem to remember a game between St. Louis and Dallas that was about 37-23 in shots. The hits, 33-32 in the first game for St. Louis. They ramped it up in the second game. They got 50 hits to 31 for the Bruins. Face-off percentage favored the Bruins, 54-46 in Game 1. Game 2, 50%. Right down the middle. And if the puck possession game can reside with the Blues, like the shots show, we're probably into a dangerous area. That being said, we saw a huge swing between Game 1 and 2. Maybe we see a huge swing back between Games 2 and 3. Power plays. Boston was 1 for 5 in Game 1, 1 for 5 in Game 2. St. Louis 0 for 2 in Game 1, 0 for 3 in Game 2. I've stated before, I think, while they're 2 for 10, the McAvoy goal was more of just a beautiful shot. It wasn't really, and it was one that Bennington probably should have had, but it wasn't really as a result of a power play. And the second goal was at the start of the last game, and it didn't end up being a factor at all as St. Louis won it in overtime. So that power play goal was nice and all, but at the end of the day, St. Louis still won the game. Blocked shots, Boston outpaced St. Louis in Games 1 and 2. 12-7 in Game 1 and 19-13 in Game 2. Giveaways, each team had 10 in that first game. I was very surprised to see that St. Louis had 17 giveaways in Game 2. Boston had 9. So what that tells me is that when St. Louis gives away the puck, either they're giving it away at the other end of the ice, or they're recovering very, very well after. Because on 17 giveaways, plus whatever else happens in the game, Boston still only manages 23 shots. So impressive night overall, and the bad giveaways by St. Louis make it look all the more impressive because Boston wasn't able to convert on those, and they were doing that against Carolina, and they were doing that against Columbus. So, I know there's going to be fans of both teams that are still steadfastly certain that their team's going to run the other team over. I still think we're in for kind of a long series. Boston really needs that first line to get going, whether it's Heinen on that wing or whether it's Pasternak or whoever, or Cam Neely comes down from up in the box and says, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Whatever ends up happening here, Boston's got to get it going. They only have, a grand total of 6 goals through 2 games. One of those is an empty netter. St. Louis only has 5 as well, but remember, St. Louis got here by playing games like the one they played in Game 2. They love that defensive, really low-scoring. Boston, it's been a little bit flashier along the way, and if they're playing that low-scoring, really tight-checking, heavy-hitting game, they play right into St. Louis's wheelhouse. Even if Sundqvist is out, there's still plenty of guys in this lineup that can hit. Even if Bortuzzo's pulled out, there are plenty of guys in this lineup that can hit. So it'll be a bit of a different game without Sundqvist, and if Bortuzzo was out and Dunn was in, and there's no guarantee that Dunn's in. I haven't heard yet for sure that he's playing. But it also could be frustrating to Boston because they could adjust and then things could change on them. In a game where these teams on paper are kind of close, and it's obvious that it's the depth guys who could make a huge difference. I mentioned that the fourth line for Boston's made a difference in the positive for them, while the first line struggled. St. Louis, their depth has been fantastic as well. So this could be a series that's won by the depth guys, where we look back, 10, 20 years down the road and say we had some really unlikely heroes in that Stanley Cup final. It's been fun so far. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, the winner and all that wonderful stuff. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, which I almost don't really need to say right now because, over 1,200 new subscribers in the last 48 hours. Welcome to the channel. I've never seen that kind of growth before. But, we probably will continue to see that through the end of the Stanley Cup final, and I welcome it. And I'm anxious to see what happens tomorrow and share that with you guys as well. And again, if Boston's got to lose a Stanley Cup final, I would be perfectly fine with it being the Blues because of all the suffering they've gone through and everything. And again, and I know there's a lot of comments about how dirty the Blues have been and how they're a heavy-hitting team. I don't look at them and see a really dirty team. I just don't. I've been mad at dirty teams in the playoffs before, even since this channel came into existence, and I don't get that same feeling with St. Louis, even though this is the second team that they're playing that I'm really hoping does something. They destroyed my dream Stanley Cup by taking out Dallas, and now they're trying to destroy another dream by taking out Boston. But, Glory is a fun song, and I was always a Laura Branigan fan, so maybe you got that working in your favor. Thank you guys so much for watching, all your support. It's all appreciated, and I'll talk to you again soon.